Ahoy there, my children of the watch. Welcome to Star Wars Transmission's weekly Q&A. Jeez, I'm your boy Dan, and we've got some really fun, some really exciting questions to dive into today. So let's get right to it. So for our first question, Brian Zetto asks, why did Sifo-Dyas commission the Kaminoans to create a clone army? I really like this question a lot because, to be quite honest with you, I don't think that this question is cut and dry answered in Star Wars, at least as far as the prequel films go, and even to some extent in the Clone Wars. So let's talk about it. Why exactly did Sifo-Dyas decide, hey, I want to get a clone army created for the Republic? So in Attack of the Clones, we see Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's doing this investigation that leads him to Kamino. And once he's on Kamino, he learns that, hey, this Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas commissioned the Kaminoans to create a clone army for the Republic. And from there in the film, it's not really explained how exactly Sifo-Dyas went on to do this, why he went on to create the clones for the Republic. All we know is that, hey, Sifo-Dyas came to Kamino about 10 years. I think Lama Su tells Obi-Wan about 10 years prior, Sifo-Dyas came to Kamino and commissioned the Kaminoans to create this army for the Republic. So in a nutshell, essentially what was happening is that Sifo-Dyas foresaw through the Force this galactic-wide conflict that was going to grip the galaxy, and the Republic would essentially need to have an army to be able to deal with this galaxy-wide conflict that he had foreseen. And what we learn in the novel Dooku, Jedi Lost, which is an excellent novel, it's written by Cavan Scott, we learn that while Dooku was apprenticed to the Jedi Master Leen Kostana, he wound up opening himself up to the cosmic force, which granted him these very vivid force visions that were very accurate. And so he would have force visions of the future, and they tended to actually come true, which we've seen in Star Wars, right? We've seen individuals have force visions that don't exactly wind up happening. And for Sifo-Dyas, that actually was the opposite. His force visions, we do see they come to fruition. And so Sifo-Dyas begins to... One example that I love that they give in Dooku Jedi Lost is he has this force vision of a storm destroying this planet called Proto Branch. And was Proto Branch in the Midrim? I can't remember exactly where Proto Branch is in the galaxy, but he has this force vision that basically saw the planet engulfed in flames, and that turned out to actually be the case. Because of the severity of this vision, Leen Kostana continued to, or I should say, because of the severity of Sifo-Dyas's vision, his master Leen Kostana continued to work with Sifo-Dyas even after he had been knighted. And the emotional toll that these visions had taken wound up causing Sifo-Dyas to actually develop a stutter, which is something else that I really enjoyed reading in Dooku Jedi Lost. And so after Sifo-Dyas, he becomes a Jedi Knight. He then becomes a Jedi Master, and then he becomes a member of the Jedi High Council. And at some point prior to the invasion of Naboo, tensions started to arise between Sifo-Dyas and the Jedi Council. And basically, this was due to the fact that Sifo-Dyas had actually foreseen this full-scale galactic conflict that was going to grip the Republic. And he actually started advocating for the creation of an army for the Republic. And the rest of the Jedi Council deemed his beliefs, deemed his ideas as too extreme. And so Sifo-Dyas was then removed from his position as a member of the Jedi High Council. And so even though he was removed from the Jedi High Council and the Jedi had rejected his project, he still found a way to carry out that plan to create a clone army without the Jedi's consent. And that's where he then contacted the Kaminoans so that he could secretly task them with growing a clone army that could then be used for the Republic. And so Diaz actually personally commissioned Prime Minister Lama Su to create this clone army and pretended that it was a request from the Galactic Senate. It's still not entirely clear how the Sith caught wind of this project, but Dooku claimed that Diaz was willingly working with him to create the clone army because of the future that Sifo-Dyas had seen. It would not shock me in the slightest bit if in the future, or let's say a comic or a book, we get information that Darth Sidious had a Force vision, he learned what Sifo-Dyas was up to, and that's how the Sith caught wind of what Sifo-Dyas was doing with the Kaminoans. It also wouldn't surprise me if Sifo-Dyas reached out to Count Dooku because those two were very close to each other. In Dooku Jedi Lost, we get to see firsthand just how close those two were. They were essentially, for lack of a better term, kind of like best friends during their time coming up together in the Jedi Order, becoming Padawans, then becoming Jedi Knights. So they were very, very close. So it wouldn't shock me if Sifo-Dyas explained to Dooku that, hey, I've got this Force vision that has shown me that there is going to be this disastrous conflict within the galaxy, within the Republic, and the Jedi are going to need to be creating a clone army to help defend the Republic. And Dooku at that point was probably maybe not a fully apprentice to Sidious, or right around the time where he was going to be apprentice to Sidious, and that's when he said, hey, we could use this to our advantage. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me if that's how the Sith found out about Sifo-Dyas and what he was doing with the Kaminoans. Brian mentioned in his comment that the films don't do a good job of explaining this, and I have to agree. The films really don't do a very good job of explaining how the hell Sifo-Dyas created these clones, or why, I shouldn't say how, why he created these clones. All we know in Attack of the Clones is, hey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he travels to Kamino, he's doing this investigation, and then we find out that Sifo-Dyas, about 10 years earlier, had actually reached out to the Kaminoans. Let's get that back up here. Reached out to the Kaminoans because he wanted them to create a clone army for the Republic. So I have to agree with Brian. In the season 6 episode of the Clone Wars, we actually do get some information about Sifo-Dyas and kind of what went into this whole situation with Sifo-Dyas reaching out to the Kaminoans, how the Sith were kind of sort of involved in this plot. And even then, basically, we just get like a one-line sentence from Count Dooku at the end of the episode. It's episode 10. It's called The Lost Ones in season 6. Dooku is on Obadiah because basically Sidious is like, bro, you have messed this up. You were clumsy, and now the Jedi are hot on our trail. Take care of this. So Dooku goes to Obadiah. When he travels there, Obi-Wan and Anakin have already arrived there because they've already started to piece together some of this information. And Dooku then starts dueling Anakin and Obi-Wan. And Dooku basically tells Obi-Wan in a very quick one-sentence comment that, hey, Sifo-Dyas foresaw this. He knew what was coming. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing there. But yeah, even in that episode, it doesn't completely explain Sifo-Dyas and how he came to know the Republic was going to need a army to be available once the Clone Wars broke out. But at least it's something. Attack of the Clones really doesn't do the best job with explaining it. And that's one of my critiques of Attack of the Clones. I would say that Attack of the Clones is probably my least favorite Star Wars film. I feel like there's a lot of plot holes in that movie, that being one of them. Maybe not necessarily a plot hole, but that just being like, wait, bro, hold on. Who is this Sifo-Dyas? When did he go and contact the Kaminoans? Why did he do this? It just kind of like didn't make sense. And I understand that that's a good part, or a big part of the Clone Wars animated series, was to help kind of fill in some of those gaps that weren't explained in the movies. But then even in that season 6 episode of the Clone Wars, like I said, it's a very quick like throwaway line from Count Dooku, and you could either one hear it and not realize what Dooku is mentioning to Obi-Wan, but also two, it happens so quickly that you might not even catch it. I actually didn't even realize that Dooku said that to Obi-Wan until I got this question. I was like, let me go back and watch that episode. I watched that episode and I was like, holy crap, I never noticed that Dooku actually says that to Obi-Wan there. I've watched that episode, I can't even tell you how many times at this point, and it was only after getting this question from Brian, sitting down, rewatching that episode and going through it very slowly, really trying to pick apart some of that episode, that I caught that. So that's one of my gripes with Attack of the Clones, is that there's some plot holes in that movie. But yeah, so in a nutshell, basically, Sifo-Dyas, he learned about he had a vision that the Clone Wars was going to break out, and he knew that, hey, we need to get an army created for the Republic so that the Republic is aware of or prepared for once that conflict breaks out. All right. On to the next question. Sticking with some Count Dooku. Love it. So Elaine Easton 2748 asks, why didn't Obi-Wan believe Dooku when he warned him about Darth Sidious? And like I said, I love me some Count Dooku. Love that we got some more Dooku to discuss. So I think it all boils down to not only Obi-Wan's hubris and arrogance, but just the Jedi in general. Their arrogance and their hubris. Dooku is straight up spitting facts to Obi-Wan. Dooku is not pulling punches here. He's straight up telling Obi-Wan, here is what's happening. The Republic is being controlled by a Sith Lord. And Dooku is doing that because he's trying to convince Obi-Wan to become his next apprentice, right? Dooku was doing the same thing that Darth Sidious was doing. Dooku was trying to find an apprentice so that he could eventually, hopefully, kill Darth Sidious and become the Sith Master. And Darth Sidious is doing the same thing. Darth Sidious is biding his time until he could oust Dooku with Anakin. And so Dooku is trying to convince Obi-Wan to become his apprentice. And he's telling Obi-Wan, bro, there is a Sith Lord that controls the Republic. Here's what's going down. Obi-Wan tells Dooku that is completely impossible. There's no way that would happen because the Jedi would be aware. He and the Jedi could not accept the possibility or any reality that the Sith were not extinct. We hear that happen. We hear them talk about that in The Phantom Menace, that the Sith have been extinct after they kill, after Obi-Wan kills, or presumably kills Maul. They say that, hey, Sith has been killed. Was he the master or the apprentice? They're still not sure. And at that point, they think, hey, Sith are done. And again, they're still like, hey, there's no way the Sith would be around without the Jedi knowing about it. So the Jedi could not accept that reality. But just as Dooku tells Obi-Wan, the growing dark side throughout the galaxy was throwing the Force out of balance, and it was blinding the Jedi Order's ability to sense Darth Sidious's rise. So Dooku tells that to Obi-Wan, and I love that he tells that to Obi-Wan, like, bro, there is the growing dark side is basically blinding the Jedi Order, And again, just straight up spitting facts to Obi-Wan, and he does not want to hear it. On top of that, right, so forget about the fact that Darth Sidious and Count Dooku, they're rising in power. The Jedi Temple sat atop a Sith shrine. It was built over a Sith shrine, and the thought was, when the Jedi built the Grand Temple, was, hey, the extremely powerful dark energies that are emanating from this Sith shrine that was built on a vergence in the Force, we build this Jedi Temple over it, it's going to help minimize these dark and contain the dark energies coming from that Sith shrine. Well, to some extent it worked, but what they did not realize was that the dark energy that still came from the Sith shrine basically helped to also blind the Jedi from the Sith's rise throughout this time period. So Sidious's rise, Dooku's rise, that's helping to blind the Jedi Order. The Sith shrine underneath the Jedi Grand Temple was blinding them. So they struggle to see through the Force the growing power in the dark side. And that's why you hear multiple times throughout the prequels and in the Clone Wars animated series that it's tough for the Jedi to see. It's tough for the Jedi to see through the Force what's going on because the dark side is clouding their vision. And so that's what they mean by that when they're saying that, is that, hey, the growing dark side is throwing the Force out of balance, and because of that, they're struggling to see. But even if you take all of that out of the equation, the biggest reason that Obi-Wan didn't want to believe Dooku was he just could not accept the possibility that maybe the Jedi were wrong. And maybe they done goofed and allowed a Sith Lord to take control of the Republic right under their noses. You know, say what you want about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but one of my favorite freaking moments in Star Wars is Obi-Wan apologizing to Darth Vader and telling him, I'm sorry for all of it. Because Obi-Wan has realized, bro, we absolutely goofed. We done messed up so bad. We allowed a Sith Lord to take control of the Republic, to topple the Jedi Order and create this galactic empire. And he did it right under our noses. We helped him. Bro, I love that moment so much because, again, it just goes to show you how much Obi-Wan was blinded by the dogma of the Jedi and the flaws that were very present in the Jedi Order during that time period. It seemed utterly impossible to Obi-Wan that could be a scenario where the Sith are controlling the Republic. And so to him, he's like, yeah, Dooku is 100% lying to me here. It was only after it was too late that the Jedi realized that, yeah, we were manipulated by a Sith Lord. And going back to the episode in the Clone Wars, episode 10 in season 6 that I was mentioning earlier, one of the things I love about that episode, the very end, we get a scene where Anakin and Obi-Wan, they're reporting to the Jedi High Council, like, hey, here's what's happened on Obadiah. We've kind of pieced together some things here. We have learned that Count Dooku is Darth Tyrannus. We have learned that Darth Tyrannus was responsible in conjunction with Sifo-Dyas for the creation of the clone army. And so they're discussing the fact that the Sith were responsible for creating the clones and how disastrous this would be for them. And in their minds, they're like, yo, this is an absolute PR nightmare. If we come out and we explain this to the general public, if we explain this to the galaxy, people will lose faith in the Jedi, they're going to lose faith in the Republic, and they're going to lose faith in the war effort. All of this just goes to show, guys, how masterful Darth Sidious was and how masterful the Sith were in destroying both the Republic and the Jedi and implementing the Sith Grand Plan. Because the Sith had been so successful in operating in the shadows that even when a Sith apprentice is outright explaining to a Jedi what the Sith are up to, it was impossible for that Jedi to believe that Sith. Well, at that point, Obi-Wan doesn't know in Attack of the Clones that Count Dooku is a Sith, but again, the fact still remains that the Sith were so masterful in implementing the Sith Grand Plan, in bringing about the destruction of both the Republic and the Jedi Order. They did that so masterfully. Sidious did that so masterfully that even when it is being spelled out to Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's like, bro, not on my watch. No way in hell that would happen. Say what you want about the prequels. I think a lot of people that subscribe to Star Wars Transmissions probably love the prequels like I do, but I know that there are folks that don't like the prequels. But to me, one of the best things about the prequels and content that we've gotten that dives into that time period, I love moments like this. I love moments where we get to sit down and realize, like, yo, think about what Darth Sidious did. Think about what the Sith did, and just how masterful they were at orchestrating the downfall of the Jedi Order and in toppling the Republic. Oh, I love it so much. So yeah, to answer Elaine's question, it basically just boils down to Obi-Wan did not believe Count Dooku because he did not see a scenario where it could ever be possible that Count Dooku was telling him the truth. And actually, didn't I take I did. I freaking took I do this too often. I start rambling on and I forgot. This is the image from that episode before that I was mentioning before, episode 10, The Lost Ones in season 6 of the Clone Wars. Love that episode. It's such an excellent episode. All right. So next up, Edward Dangalini. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. 910 asks, why is it rare for a Jedi or a Sith to wield a double-bladed lightsaber? So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's rare for a Sith, excuse me. I wouldn't say it's rare for a Sith and or a Darksider to wield a double-sided lightsaber, because that's kind of primarily who we've seen wield them, right? Darth Maul most notably used a double-bladed lightsaber, and he used several of them actually. But so did Savage Opress, Asajj Ventress, and double-bladed lightsabers actually dated back to, in canon, he's considered a mythical Sith Lord, Exar Kun. Savage Opress, he was a Sith apprentice. He was technically a Sith apprentice under Count Dooku, and then even he was a Sith apprentice to Darth Maul when Maul and Savage were building up the Shadow Collective. They were essentially rival Sith to Darth Sidious. So technically, Savage Opress was also a Sith apprentice, and he wielded a double-bladed lightsaber. And while the Inquisitors are not Sith Lords, they're still Darksiders, and they rocked double-bladed lightsabers, and in fact, I think they rock some of the coolest looking lightsabers. I know that's very much a hot topic for some folks. Some people do not like their lightsabers. Some people are like, yo, they're dope. I love the lightsabers that the Inquisitors use. I love Reva's lightsaber. I love the Grand Inquisitor's lightsaber. His is sick. Second Sister's lightsaber is sick. Yeah, I love the Inquisitor's lightsabers. So those are just some other examples of Darksiders and Sith that have used a double-bladed lightsaber. In addition to that, while it's somewhat rare for Jedi to wield double-bladed lightsabers, there are several examples of Jedi using some double-bladed lightsabers, especially during the High Republic. So these two Jedi, Orla Jarini and Sheev Palpatine, they're from the High Republic, and they both wielded double-bladed lightsabers, excuse me. I love Orla Jarini's lightsabers because you could see here, her lightsaber were, she could fold them, and she actually purified a kyber crystal. I can't remember if it was one or two. I think it was two. which is why she has a white double-bladed lightsaber. And I love Orla Jarini's story in the High Republic. Sheev Palpatine is another character who I've loved reading about in the High Republic. So there are two excellent characters that use double-bladed lightsabers, and both sabers are pretty badass. Sheev's lightsaber hilt is dope. I love the hilts from the High Republic. But in addition to them, we have some examples of Jedi during the Clone Wars that wielded double-bladed lightsabers. So Pong Krell, he's probably the most well-known Jedi that used double-bladed lightsabers. In fact, our bro, he dual-wielded double-bladed lightsabers, which is dope. His lightsabers kind of look like Jedi Temple Guard lightsabers. So you look at the hilts, they kind of sort of resemble each other, but not fully. Jedi Temple Guards, they used a variation of a double-bladed lightsaber called a lightsaber pike. So you could see here, they could ignite the bottom portion of their lightsaber, or they could rock it like this, more like a pike, which I like. I hope we get to see more lightsaber pikes in Star Wars, not just from the Jedi Temple Guards. I really like, I've mentioned this before, I played Star Wars The Old Republic for, oh my god, like close to a decade. I played it for a very long period of time, and I like that you could get characters that could wield lightsaber pikes. I think they're really cool. They're really fun. I wish we get to see more of those in canon. I would even if it's in the High Republic, I would love to see some Jedi rocking lightsaber pikes outside of just the Jedi Temple Guards. With that said, we don't get a ton of Jedi that rock double-bladed lightsabers. They don't seem to use them a ton. And I think the reason in canon is probably the same reason in Legends. So in Legends, double-bladed lightsabers became very popular among Sith forces during what was called the Jedi Civil War. And I can't remember off the top of my head the dates of when the Jedi Civil War was. Thousands of years prior to the events of the original trilogy. So thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin. So the Sith start using double-bladed lightsabers, and even some Jedi began to use double-bladed lightsabers. However, the Jedi Council, they traditionally frowned upon the use of saber staffs. Double-bladed lightsabers, you'll sometimes see them referred to as saber staffs. Same difference, basically. But the Jedi Council, they frowned upon the use of saber staffs and believed that a traditional lightsaber was more than enough for a Jedi, and they considered double-bladed lightsabers to be a weapon designed to kill more effectively. So basically, the Jedi stance was, hey, a double-bladed lightsaber is a weapon more in line with offense and killing rather than defense, right? This single-bladed lightsaber that I've got is just as good, if not better, for defense and for defending life. As such, since our stance is we are an order that protects life, we're here to defend life, and we're going to only fight and we're going to only kill if it means we're defending life in one way or another, right? So because of that, they frowned upon the use of double-bladed lightsabers. And as far as I can tell, that may be the same kind of stance in canon, but I haven't seen it specifically outlined in anything yet or stated in anything, any canon release yet, unless I've missed it, which I definitely could. I think that explanation would be why even in canon we don't see many Jedi wielding double-bladed lightsabers. As I said, I don't think we've gotten a specific explanation in canon as to why we don't see a lot of Jedi rocking double-bladed lightsabers, but I think that explanation from Legends is probably going to be the same explanation in canon. Issue 25, let me go over here. So issue 25 of Charles Soule's Star Wars comic. I've mentioned, oh man, I can't even tell you how many live streams at this point I've mentioned this comic series. Charles Soule is an excellent author. He's in his Star Wars comic run is excellent. Can't recommend it enough. But if you're like, hey, I'm not really a comic reader, if there's one comic I would suggest to read outside of Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, because that's another Charles Soule comic that is spectacular, I would say, hey, go read issue 25 of Charles Soule's Star Wars comic, because that comic, you get stories that feature Poe, Anakin, and Obi-Wan. So there's 3 stories from 3 different eras. You get a story with Poe, you get a story with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then you get a story with Darth Vader and Darth Sidious. And it's spectacular. So yeah, you are like, I only want to read, just maybe I'll read one comic, maybe. Go read issue 25 of Charles Soule's Star Wars. Totally awesome. So in that issue, Anakin basically is asking Obi-Wan, like, bro, why do we only use a lightsaber? Why don't we use other crazy weapons made out of kyber crystals? And basically Obi-Wan tells him, like, hey, that's kind of more the Sith's thing. You know, we're not going to use crazy things like a kyber spear. Or he tells Anakin that he had designed essentially lightsaber nunchucks. And his explanation was kind of what I was mentioning earlier. The Jedi were basically, we're trying to defend life. Our mission is to defend life and to protect life in every instance. And so that the lightsaber, the single-bladed lightsaber that you see Jedi wield, that is more in line with our mission as an order. And that makes sense to me and explains why we see several Jedi from the High Republic era that are rocking double-bladed lightsabers, and we only see basically Pong Krell and the Jedi Temple Guards in during the prequels rocking double-bladed lightsabers, because a big part of the High Republic, or essentially what the High Republic is trying to do, is trying to paint a picture for fans to say, hey, how did the Jedi, going back to what we discussed earlier, how were the Jedi blinded? How did the Jedi allow Darth Sidious and the Sith to operate right under their noses and overthrow the Republic and the Jedi Order? And so the High Republic is supposed to show, like, hey, the Jedi weren't always like how they were during the prequels. They are way more dogmatic during the prequels than they are during the High Republic. They're much more lax in terms of their rules, and how they view the Force is even different from the Jedi during the Republic. So wouldn't shock me as we continue to get more High Republic stories and more Jedi are introduced, that we start to see even more Jedi during that era wield double-bladed lightsabers. I am all for cool looking and different looking lightsabers. Like, we just got Visions Volume 2 just dropped, and the first episode of that season, Sith, the Sith Master that is in that episode, I don't want to reveal too much if you haven't watched it, but the Sith Master that's in that episode has a lightsaber that is so freaking cool looking. And the only other Jedi that has a somewhat similar lightsaber is Creighton's son. And if you're familiar with Creighton's son from Phase 2 of the High Republic, you'll understand what I mean. And again, I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't seen Visions, because the Sith episode is really cool. It's really fun. But yeah, I would love to see more funky lightsabers, more double-bladed lightsabers from Jedi. But yeah, the prequel era Jedi were just far more dogmatic than the High Republic Jedi. So I could see the High Council during the prequels saying, bro, double-bladed lightsabers are more offensive. They're more deadly than traditional lightsabers, so they're frowned upon. Like if we have some Jedi that use it, okay, but they're gonna be frowned upon. Excellent question. Oh yeah, here's some. Always do this. Here's a cool shot of Sheev Palpatine with her awesome lightsaber. I love the High Republic comic series from Kevin Scott. It's spectacular. All right, so on to our last question, which comes from Bonnie the Bunny 7051, who asks, "What's your favorite candy? What's your favorite candy bar? And what's your favorite horror movie?" I saw this. I was like, you want to answer this? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to answer this damn question. So my favorite candy bar, hands down, let's make this bigger because it deserves to be as big as possible. It's freaking Twix. I love Twix. They are so good. So even though we don't get a lot of trick-or-treaters every year, Danny Girl and I will go buy candy for Halloween, and I make sure that we have to get candy that either it's like a mixed bag with a bunch of different candies, we got to make sure there are Twix in there, or like we're straight up getting Twix. Because I love Twix. They are so good. Second favorite candy bar. Make this a little smaller so we can go to the next image. Snickers, baby. And I want that. Snickers is so damn good. I want to have that with a Twix, and both of them, their ice cream, the ice cream Twix bar and the ice cream Snickers bar are spectacular. Oh, so freaking good. But if I had to choose, I probably, I don't know. Now would I rather have it ice cream version of it or non-ice cream? I don't know. Either way, they're freaking incredible. Both are so good. I could devour me some Snickers and some Twix. When I was younger, I think it was in college around this time, we had a stray cat that, so growing up, I always had cats, and we had this stray cat that would kind of come and hang out with my family and I. We already had several, so my mom's like, hey, we can't take another one. But we used to have this cat that we named Snickers because the color of the cat's fur kind of was like black, orange with some like tan in it. So we named him Snickers, and we fed him a bunch. Don't know what happened to that cat, but Snickers was fun. As for horror movies, one of my absolute favorite horror movies is Hereditary. I love that movie so much. Everything about it is incredible, and it's utterly terrifying. That movie is scary as hell. The last 20 minutes of that movie, just frightening beyond belief. Like, there's been a couple times where, for whatever reason, that movie pops into my head. I'm like, yo, I kind of want to watch the last scene of the film. And I don't know if you would consider it the last act of the film, because it's like 20 to 30 minutes long. So it's kind of long. The final ending of the film. Dude, it's so scary. And like I said, there's been a couple of times, and it's always like right before bed. I'm like, yo, I kind of want to watch this scene. I'll pop it on, and Danny's like, are you crazy, man? Like, we're trying to go to bed here, and you're going to put this movie on? Like, dude, the end of that movie is frightening beyond belief. Just weirdos hanging around naked. If you've never seen that movie, that's all I'm going to tell you about the ending of it. It is so freaking scary, but it's excellent. It's one of those movies where there's a lot going on underneath, and there's more happening than you realize. And it probably will take you more than one viewing to understand, hey, what the hell is going on? Or, hey, I didn't catch this the first time. Like, yo, look, they were kind of explaining what was going on. The people involved with what's going on. We had signs early in the movie. Like, oh, it's so great. The cinematography in the film is spectacular. The acting is spectacular. It is just an all-around excellent movie. Can't recommend it enough. As I mentioned, just a lot of symbolism, a lot of clues as to what's going on. It's a phenomenal movie. Another favorite of mine is The Shining. I love this movie. It's another terrifying film. It's incredible. It's iconic. There's so much about this movie that is just wonderful. Aside from it being a very scary movie and amazing, it's essentially a narrative and how do I want to say this? So the deeper meaning of the film is essentially about the genocide of Native Americans. You'll see there's actually multiple theories as to what the actual meaning of the film is. I subscribe to the theory that that film is about Native American genocide. And that's basically the message that Stanley Kubrick, the director of The Shining, was trying to discuss with that movie. And it's steeped in symbolism and in metaphors, and that's the good stuff for me. That's the stuff that I love. During my college days, I made the mistake of watching that movie at like 2 a.m. I was all by myself, terrified to go to sleep. I was like, yo, bro, I straight up goofed. I don't know what I was thinking putting that movie on at 2 a.m., but it scared the bejesus out of me. There's a scene. Essentially, the movie is about, or the story takes place in this hotel that's haunted. And so throughout the film, you start to see weird things going down. And at one point during the film, you see some ghosts, one of which is dressed in like a bear costume with another man. And I don't know why. Like, it's really not that scary. It creeped me out beyond belief. Like, I saw that for the first time. It's like, oh my God, this creeped me out so much that scene stuck out to me even more than some of the other scenes in the movie. But yeah, it's just so freaking good. Stanley Kubrick is an excellent director. If you haven't seen any of his films, or if you haven't, let's say you have seen The Shining, but you haven't watched any of his other films, I would highly recommend Full Metal Jacket, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Those are excellent movies. That same thing with The Shining. There's more than meets the eye with that story. There's definitely a message being delivered in the film, which is great. Another movie that I love is It Follows. I very much am into horror movies that make you think, that are not going to just be like, I'm going to scare the crap out of you with a jump scare, or I'm going to make this really scary looking monster or villain, or it's going to be super gory and that's what's going to make you like it. Like, for me, the horror movies that I tend to like are the ones that are make you think on a deeper level and make you want to analyze the film on a deeper level and have a deeper meaning. And all of these films do that. And It Follows, oh my God. I got sucked down a rabbit hole of reading Reddit threads and reading like blog posts and articles all about the meaning of this movie, the symbolism, the anachronisms in the movie. One of the things that's so incredible about It Follows is that you have no clue when this movie takes place. You have one scene that makes you think like, oh, this is modern day. And then you get another scene where it's like, bro, is that like a nurse wearing an outfit from 1950s? It makes no sense what you're seeing as far as the time period goes. And that was done purposely. Essentially, I'm drawing up David Robert Mitchell. He said that the idea behind the movie was, hey, this movie was basically a nightmare. And it's supposed to make you feel uneasy and unsettling. You're not supposed to know when it takes place. That's like kind of how our dreams are. And yeah, that movie is another movie steeped in symbolism. Like I said, anachronisms out the wazoo. One instance, it looks like it's winter. The next instance, it looks like it's summer. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And it's creepy as hell. And there's a bunch of different theories as to the deeper meaning of the film. Just can't recommend it enough. And the soundtrack is straight up just horrifying and amazing. I listen to a wide variety of different genres in music, and I tend to like, I don't know if scary would be the right word, but I will say I like to listen to a wide variety of different genres, and I do like to listen to music in line with the soundtrack for It Follows. It's incredible, but some of the songs in that soundtrack, just straight up listening to them, give me the heebie-jeebies. So like the opening track of the film, or I guess it'd be like the main theme of the film, is just straight up terrifying to listen to. Like I remember watching It Follows for the first time and then getting hooked into the soundtrack, and it was around Halloween time. So I was listening to it. Danielle wasn't home. I was by myself, and I'm like, yo, I need to stop listening to this soundtrack because it is freaking me the hell out. That's how good that soundtrack is. It's perfect for a horror movie. So yeah, another movie that I cannot recommend enough. It is just spectacular. But with that said, my friends, that is all the time we've got for questions. These were some really fun questions. I got a bunch of questions this week. I sadly couldn't get to them all. If you did not see your question answered this week, I'm going to try to get to it, hopefully for next week's Q&A. If not next week, I'll make sure to get to it in a future Q&A, because I got a bunch of different questions this week, and I sadly just couldn't get to them all. But now is a good time, you knuckleheads. If you have not liked this video, please like this video, subscribe to Star Wars Transmissions. Always appreciate getting love from my homies, so make sure to subscribe, make sure to like this video. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on my responses to any questions. I would love to know, what horror movies do you guys like? What's your favorite candy? Let me know down in the comments. If you have TikTok, follow Star Wars Transmissions on TikTok. You could follow us at SW Transmissions. With that said, my friends, I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna chill. I gotta make my lunch. I gotta finish making my lunch. I've got it pretty much made, but I gotta finish making my lunch. I'm gonna hopefully catch the end of the Yankees. Hopefully my Yankees are freaking winning, even though they kind of stink this year. Hopefully they're winning, and I'm probably going to chill and play some Halo, probably get my booty cheeks clapped in Halo. But with that said, thanks for watching. May the Force be with you, and stay nerdy.